Rachel Whitfield knelt on the cold marble floor of her own penthouse, 8 months pregnant, wiping the bottom of a stiletto heel that belonged to her husband's mistress. Her husband sat 3 feet away, sipping coffee, watching her like she was hired help. The woman wearing the shoe looked down and smiled. "You missed a spot." What none of them knew, what neither Garrett Whitfield nor his mistress Serena Cole, nor his own mother, who orchestrated the entire affair, had ever bothered to discover. The woman on her knees, the one they starved of dignity, the one they moved into a closet near the kitchen, the one they threw onto the street while 9 months pregnant. She was the one who funded everything. Every dollar of the $22 million that built Garrett's empire came from her hands. The contracts were signed, the repayment deadline was approaching, and she had been counting every single day. They turned his pregnant wife into a servant. They had no idea she was actually his creditor, and the bill was already past due. Story value and lesson: this story carries a truth that many people learn too late. Silence is not the absence of strength. It is often the place where strength is being refined. Rachel did not endure because she was powerless. She endured because she was preparing. She protected her child, her future, and her dignity, not by shouting, not by begging, but by standing firm when it mattered most. If you have ever been underestimated because you stayed calm instead of reacting, this story is for you. Your patience is not weakness. Your time will come. If this story moved you, do not leave without telling us. Drop a comment and share which moment hit you the hardest. Was it the wine at the gala, the courtroom reveal, or the moment Rachel whispered to her unborn daughter, "We are okay"? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear tonight. Hit that like button so this story can reach the people who need it. Share it with someone who has ever felt invisible. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because part 2 is coming, and Rachel Whitfield is not done yet. Rachel Whitfield knelt on the cold marble floor of her own penthouse, her swollen belly pressing against the faded fabric of a dress she had worn 3 days in a row. The room smelled of polished leather and expensive perfume that did not belong to her. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Upper East Side, illuminating a life that no longer included her. Garrett Whitfield sat on the sofa, legs crossed, scrolling through his phone as if the woman carrying his child were part of the furniture. He did not look up. He did not need to. Control, he had learned, worked best when it stopped requiring effort. Serena Cole extended her stiletto heel from the opposite end of the couch. The shoe was Italian, cream-colored, worth more than everything Rachel currently owned. "You missed a spot," Serena said. Rachel wiped the leather carefully. Her hands did not tremble. Her face showed nothing. Not defeat, not rage, not the quiet arithmetic running behind her eyes. Garrett glanced up briefly. "She means well," he said to no one in particular. "Everyone has a role." Rachel placed the cloth on the floor, sat back on her heels, and looked at both of them, just looked. Serena shifted slightly under the gaze but recovered quickly, lifting her chin. "You can finish the kitchen after this," Serena added. Rachel nodded once. "Of course." She rose slowly, one hand supporting her belly, and walked toward the kitchen without another word. What neither of them understood, what neither of them had ever bothered to investigate, was this. The woman they had just ordered to clean their shoes was the one who owned the debt beneath their feet. The $22 million that built Garrett's empire had come from her hands. The repayment schedule was already past due, and the bill was about to arrive. Before we continue, where are you watching from right now? What time is it there? If stories about quiet strength and unexpected justice move you, subscribe and stay with us. Because Rachel Whitfield's story is just getting started. 12 years before she ever knelt on marble, Rachel Baker grew up in a two-bedroom house in rural Kentucky where the walls were thin enough to hear rain on every side. Her mother, Helen Baker, cleaned houses for wealthy families in the neighboring county. She left before dawn and returned after dark, her hands cracked, her back aching, her spirit unbroken. There was never enough money, but there was always structure. Every dollar had a destination. Every decision had a reason. Helen did not believe in shortcuts. She believed in showing up, in keeping records, in remembering what people owed you even when they forgot. Rachel went with her mother on summer cleaning jobs. She sat in enormous kitchens doing math homework on marble countertops while Helen scrubbed floors 3 rooms away. She watched wealthy women inspect her mother's work with sharp eyes and sharper comments. She watched her mother absorb every criticism without flinching, then walked to the car with her head high. One afternoon, when Rachel was 16, a client examined the living room baseboards and sighed dramatically. "Helen, honestly, I could have done this myself." Helen said nothing until they were in the car. Then she turned to Rachel and spoke with a voice as steady as stone. "Stone, baby, that woman has a big house and a small mind. You remember something? A locked jaw holds more power than a screaming mouth. Let them think you are nothing. That is when you are the most dangerous." Rachel never forgot those words. She carried them through a full math scholarship to Columbia University. She carried them through late nights in the library, through internships where men twice her age dismissed her analysis until the numbers proved her right. She carried them through her graduation, top of her class, and into a position at Kessler and Pratt, one of Manhattan's most respected forensic accounting firms. By 26, Rachel was the youngest senior analyst the firm had ever hired. She could trace money through 12 shell companies in an afternoon. She could find fraud the way other people found typos. Her colleagues respected her precision. Her supervisors valued her silence. She was brilliant, methodical, and invisible. She was also, in a way she rarely admitted, profoundly lonely. Numbers made sense. Numbers did not lie. Numbers rewarded patience. But numbers did not hold your hand at the end of a long day, or laugh at your jokes, or make you feel like you existed outside of spreadsheets. That loneliness is what made her vulnerable to Garrett Whitfield. They met at a charity gala in Midtown, one of those events where wealth performed generosity under crystal chandeliers. Rachel attended as a +1 for a colleague. She wore a simple black dress and stood near the edge of the room, observing. Garrett noticed her precisely because she was not trying to be noticed. He was 30 years old, magnetic, freshly featured in a business magazine, launching a real estate development firm called Whitfield Capital. He crossed the room with the confidence of a man who believed every door was meant to open for him. "You look like you are calculating the net worth of everyone in this room," he said, smiling. "Not everyone," Rachel replied. "Just the ones who are lying about it." Garrett laughed. It was genuine, surprised, the laugh of a man who was not used to being caught off guard. They talked for 2 hours. Garrett told her about growing up upper middle class in Connecticut, about his father's bankruptcy when Garrett was 15, about the promise he made to himself that he would never be powerless again. Rachel understood that promise. She had made a similar one on a different floor in a different kind of house. When Garrett's firm hired Kessler and Pratt for a capital structure review, Rachel was assigned to the project. She flagged 3 critical risks in his financial model. Instead of being defensive, Garrett listened. He corrected. He called her the smartest person he had never been able to charm. She fell for the man who respected her mind. She did not yet know that respect, like everything else Garrett offered, had an expiration date. They married 18 months later in a small ceremony on a Saturday afternoon. Rachel chose simplicity. Garrett chose to pay for everything. "Let me handle it," he said warmly. "You deserve to just enjoy this." Rachel let him. She had learned early, from watching her mother navigate powerful households, that men like Garrett needed to believe they carried the weight alone. Correcting that belief was possible, but expensive. She chose her battles. The early months were happy, genuinely happy. Garrett asked Rachel's opinion on deals. He valued her analysis. He brought her coffee on Sunday mornings and listened when she talked about risk modeling with the same enthusiasm other women reserve for vacation plans. They were a team. The word "our" appeared naturally in every sentence. Our apartment, our future, our company. Then Whitfield Capital succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Garrett's face appeared in magazines. Investors competed for his attention. His phone rang constantly with voices that told him he was exceptional. Success did not change Garrett overnight. It changed him the way water changes stone, slowly, imperceptibly, until the original shape was gone. The first sign was language. Our company became my company. Our apartment became the apartment I pay for. Our decision became I have already decided. Rachel noticed. She always noticed. But she told herself that stress explained the shift, that pressure justified the possessive pronouns, that love could survive vocabulary changes. She was wrong. When Rachel suggested returning to work, Garrett frowned as if she had proposed something mildly embarrassing. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "I earn enough. My wife does not need to work like a clerk." It sounded protective. It was not. It was the first bar of a cage built with words instead of metal. Here's something worth remembering. Pay attention when someone starts rewriting history. When "we built this" becomes "I built this." Language does not just describe reality, it reshapes it. And by the time you notice the new version, it has already become the official one. Decisions stopped being shared. Garrett handled the finances. Garrett chose where they lived. Garrett selected the furniture, the investments, the social calendar. Rachel watched herself become a quiet figure orbiting a growing ego. She adapted because adaptation was what she knew, but she did not stop paying attention. When Whitfield Capital needed $22 million for a luxury development called Meridian Tower, banks hesitated and investors demanded too much equity. Garrett came home frustrated, pacing the living room, running numbers that did not add up. "Nobody believes in vision anymore," he muttered. "They all want guarantees." Rachel listened. She said nothing that night, but the next morning, while Garrett slept, she sat at her laptop and opened a network she had quietly maintained since leaving Kessler and Pratt. Former colleagues, private equity contacts, institutional fund managers who trusted her judgment because her judgment had never been wrong. She structured an investment vehicle called Crestline Holdings. The terms were strict but fair. Early repayment brought incentives. Delayed payments triggered escalating consequences. The anonymity was absolute. The paperwork was clean. Every clause was designed to reward discipline and punish arrogance. 3 weeks later, Garrett received confirmation of the funding. He celebrated like a conqueror, pacing the living room with his phone pressed to his ear, grinning. "You see?" he told Rachel, lifting her off her feet in a rare display of affection. "They believe in me. The market believes in me." Rachel smiled. "I know," she said. He never asked who "they" were. He never read the full terms. He never questioned the source, because questioning would require admitting that his success might depend on something other than his own genius. That was his first mistake. His second was assuming Rachel's silence meant she had nothing left to say. The pregnancy came after 2 years of trying. Rachel had almost given up hope. But one morning, the test showed 2 lines, and joy flooded through her with a force she had not allowed herself to imagine. Garrett's reaction was polite, measured, distant. "That is good," he said, after a pause that stretched too long. "We will manage." He kissed her cheek, out of habit, not joy. Then he picked up his phone and talked about a business trip. Rachel told herself that men process things differently, that responsibility sometimes looked like restraint, that love did not always arrive with fireworks. But as her belly grew, Garrett's presence shrank. He stopped asking about doctor visits. He complained when she rested. He frowned at medical bills while never hesitating to upgrade his car or book expensive dinners. "You worry too much," he said one evening. "Pregnancy is not an illness." His phone stayed face down on every surface. New cologne appeared in the bathroom, his schedule filled with sudden meetings that ended later and later. When Rachel asked gentle questions, he accused her of being hormonal, emotional, irrational. The discovery came on a Tuesday afternoon. Rachel had gone to the hospital alone for a routine prenatal checkup. The doctor spoke about blood pressure, about stress, about the importance of rest. Rachel nodded and left with a quiet heaviness in her chest. On the way home, she stopped by Garrett's office to surprise him. It was a small gesture, something she hoped might remind them both that they were still connected. She never reached his door. From the hallway, she heard his voice, lighter than she had heard it in months. Warm, laughing. "You are impossible," he said fondly. "You know that." A woman's laugh answered him, confident, comfortable, familiar with him in a way that left no room for interpretation. Rachel stood frozen, one hand on the wall for balance. She did not open the door. She did not need to. The tone told her everything. She turned around and walked out slowly. Each step was measured, deliberate, controlled. No tears came. Shock passed quickly. What settled in its place was something colder and much, much clearer. She did not confront him that night. She did not mention what she had heard. Instead, she went home, prepared dinner, and watched Garrett lie about traffic with the ease of someone who had been practicing for weeks. If you ever suspect betrayal, resist the urge to confront immediately. Emotion is valid, but timing is everything. Document first. Secure your position. Protect what matters most. The moment you confront without evidence is the moment you lose control of the outcome. Rachel understood this instinctively. She had spent her career finding hidden money. Finding a hidden affair required the same skills: patience, observation, and a willingness to let the truth reveal itself on a timeline she controlled. The name arrived first, slipped casually into conversation like a footnote that did not matter. "Serena Cole," Garrett said one evening, pouring himself a drink. "She is consulting on Meridian Tower. Very sharp, fresh perspective." Rachel nodded. Consultants came and went, but Serena did not go. Within days, Garrett began repeating phrases Rachel had never heard him use. He dressed differently. He cared about cologne, about presentation, about being seen. He started criticizing Rachel with casual cruelty. "You do not make an effort anymore," he remarked one morning, adjusting his cufflinks. "People notice these things." Rachel looked down at her swollen belly and wondered what effort he expected from a woman 7 months pregnant with his child. When she asked directly if there was someone else, Garrett laughed. "You are being paranoid. Pregnancy hormones. And that." The dismissal was almost gentle. It made the truth heavier. Serena Cole entered the penthouse for the first time on a Thursday evening. She was tall, sharp-featured, impeccably dressed. Her confidence wrapped around her like armor. She looked Rachel up and down without shame, her gaze lingering on Rachel's belly, before lifting again with a smile that contained no warmth. "It is so nice to finally meet you," Serena said, extending her hand. "Garrett speaks highly of you." The lie was polished, deliberate. Rachel shook her hand gently. "Welcome." Garrett seemed relieved by the lack of confrontation. He mistook composure for acceptance. Serena did not make the same mistake. She studied Rachel carefully, the way a predator assesses whether prey is truly passive or merely waiting. Within a week, Serena's handbag appeared on the dining table. Her shoes sat by the door. A perfume bottle that did not belong to Rachel materialized on the bathroom counter. Each object announced Serena's presence with a confidence that no longer required words. "She will be around more," Garrett said one morning. "We are working closely on a new project." Serena smiled from the sofa, legs crossed, already comfortable. "I hope that is not a problem. I hate awkwardness." Rachel met her gaze. "No, it is not." What followed was a systematic erosion of boundaries. Serena offered opinions about meals, about schedules, about how Rachel should manage her time. Each suggestion came wrapped in false concern. "You look tired," Serena remarked one afternoon. "Maybe you should slow down." Garrett glanced up. "She is fine." He turned to Rachel. "Can you bring us some water?" It was the first request that crossed a line. It would not be the last. Rachel brought the water. She placed the glasses carefully on the table and returned to her work. Serena watched with interest, measuring how far the system could be pushed. By the end of the second week, Serena's suitcase appeared in the guest bedroom. No announcement, no conversation. Patrick did nothing to remove it. "It is temporary," Garrett said when Rachel looked at him. "Do not make it difficult." Temporary became routine. Serena expected breakfast every morning. She criticized Rachel's cooking without hesitation. She pushed plates away with exaggerated dissatisfaction. "You use too much salt," she said once, grimacing. "Is this how you have always cooked?" Garrett laughed lightly. "She means well." Rachel cleared the plates and reminded herself to breathe slowly. Stress was not good for the baby. Then Diana Whitfield arrived. Garrett's mother flew in from Connecticut on a Friday afternoon, stepping out of a black car with the posture of someone who had never doubted her own importance. She was 62, silver-haired, dressed in cream cashmere, and she looked at Rachel the way one might look at a stain on expensive fabric. "Garrett, darling," Diana said, kissing her son on both cheeks. She turned to Rachel with a smile that stopped well before her eyes. "Rachel, you look tired." "Thank you, Diana. The baby keeps me busy." Diana's gaze dropped to Rachel's belly, then lifted with visible effort. "Yes, I imagine it does." That evening, Rachel overheard Diana speaking to Garrett in the study. The door was not fully closed. "I told you from the beginning," Diana said. "She does not belong in this world. Her mother cleaned houses, Garrett. Houses." Serena understands ambition. Serena understands what this family needs. Garrett's response was quiet. "Mother, it is complicated." "No," Diana said firmly. "It is simple. You are making it complicated by keeping her here." Rachel stood in the hallway, one hand on her belly, and felt the walls of the cage close another inch. She was no longer fighting one adversary. She was fighting a system. But systems, she knew from years of forensic accounting, always had a flaw. You just had to be patient enough to find it. The transition from wife to servant did not happen in a single moment. It happened in a series of small surrenders, each one so slight that resistance felt disproportionate. "Could you iron this dress for me?" Serena said one morning, handing the garment across without looking up from her phone. "I need it tonight." Rachel hesitated for half a second. Garrett noticed immediately. What is wrong? He asked sharply. Nothing, Rachel said. She took the dress. In the laundry room, she pressed the fabric with steady hands, despite the tremor that moved through her chest. Each motion was deliberate, controlled, as if she were preserving something fragile inside herself that the iron's heat could not touch. Serena inspected the result that evening. Much better, she said, turning before the mirror. You are useful. Garrett smiled. You see, everyone has a role. The roles solidified rapidly. Rachel cooked, Rachel cleaned, Rachel served. She scrubbed bathrooms while 8 months pregnant. She carried laundry upstairs while her back screamed. She prepared meals for 3 people who never thanked her and frequently complained. The eggs are too firm, Serena announced. The coffee is cold, Garrett muttered. This house is a mess, Diana observed during her visits, running a finger along the mantelpiece. Rachel adjusted. She always adjusted. She learned which complaints could be anticipated, which preferences had to be memorized, which criticisms could be absorbed without visible damage. She slept less. She worked more. Her body protested with increasing urgency. Standing for long periods sent pain shooting up her spine. Bending made her dizzy. Carrying loads strained muscles already stretched beyond their limits. One afternoon, while carrying a basket of laundry upstairs, dizziness overtook her. She gripped the railing and breathed slowly until the world steadied. Serena appeared at the top of the stairs. What are you doing? Those clothes need to be ready before evening. I need a moment, Rachel said carefully. I am not feeling well. Serena's expression did not change. Pregnancy is not an excuse. Women have been doing this for centuries. Garrett passed by and heard the exchange. He did not stop. She will manage, he said dismissively. Something tightened inside Rachel then. Not breaking, tightening, a clarity settling in that would not leave. That evening, Serena announced new arrangements. I need the master bedroom. It is closer to Garrett's office. You can use the small room near the kitchen. Garrett nodded without hesitation. That is practical. The small room was barely more than a closet. No proper bed, poor ventilation, a single window that barely opened. Rachel placed her few belongings inside and lay on the thin mattress, feeling her child shift and kick. We are okay, she whispered into the darkness. I promise. Serena did not hide her satisfaction when she inspected the arrangement the next morning. You will find it easier to be useful from here, less distraction. Rachel said nothing. She had stopped expecting decency from people who had already shown her who they were. The real damage came from Garrett, not from his cruelty, which was at least honest in its indifference, but from his erasure of the past. He spoke to Rachel as if their history had never existed, as if she had always been this. A background figure, a convenience, a body that performed labor. You should be grateful, he told her one evening. Without me, you would have nothing. Rachel looked at him, truly looked. The man who had once called her the smartest person he had ever met now could not see her at all. And you? She asked quietly. Garrett scoffed as if the question were offensive and walked away. Rachel contacted Julian Perry that night. She stepped outside to the fire escape, phone pressed to her ear, speaking softly. Julian, I need your help. Julian Perry was 40 years old, a corporate attorney, specializing in financial fraud. He owed Rachel a debt she had never collected. Years ago, she had discovered embezzlement at a firm where Julian worked. Her findings saved his career and possibly his freedom. He had told her then, if you ever need anything, Rachel, anything. Now she needed everything. Tell me, Julian said. Rachel laid out the situation with forensic precision. The marriage, Serena, Diana, the servitude, the pregnancy, and then the piece that changed everything. I structured the investment that funds Garrett's company. Through Crestline Holdings, 22 million. He does not know I am the creditor. Julian was silent for 5 full seconds. Rachel, that is extraordinary. It is leverage, she replied, but I need it to work at the right moment. Not too early, not too late. I will start preparing, Julian said. But Rachel, you need to be careful. If they discover the connection before we are ready, I know, she said. That is why I need you. She ended the call and stood in the cold night air, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the railing. Below her, the city hummed with 10 million lives that knew nothing about the quiet war being fought on this fire escape. For the first time in weeks, she felt something that was not exhaustion or fear. It was purpose. The charity gala at the Whitfield family estate in Greenwich was Diana's production. 200 guests, crystal chandeliers, catered perfection, old money and new money mingling under the pretense of philanthropy. Rachel was brought along, not as Garrett's wife. As help, she wore a plain dark dress, the only one that still fit over her belly. Serena had inspected her before they left the penthouse. That will do, Serena said dismissively. You will serve drinks. Stay out of the way. Rachel traveled in a separate car. She entered through a side door. She was given a tray and pointed toward the main hall where 200 people drank champagne and discussed tax strategies. Garrett stood at the center of it all, radiant in a tailored suit, Serena on his sham in a custom gown. Diana circulated nearby, introducing Serena to everyone as Garrett's partner, with an emphasis that left no room for ambiguity. Rachel moved through the room like a ghost. She held trays, she cleared glasses, she avoided eye contact and kept her gaze lowered. Some guests assumed she was hired help. Others did not bother to wonder at all. She is very efficient, Serena remarked casually when someone glanced at Rachel. Quiet too. That is rare these days. Polite laughter rippled through the group. Rachel served without comment. Each step was deliberate. She listened. Numbers surfaced in conversations. Expansion plans. Credit lines. Promises spoken with careless confidence. Garrett bragged more than he realized, reassuring himself, as much as his audience. The first deliberate humiliation came subtly. Serena called across the room. Rachel, you forgot to polish the glasses properly. Rachel approached, examined the glass, and nodded. I will fix it. Serena smiled for the guests. Pregnancy makes people careless. More laughter. Garrett shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Later, as Rachel bent to collect empty plates, Serena's foot extended casually, blocking her path. Rachel paused, steadied herself against the extra weight of her belly, and stepped carefully around it. Clumsy, Serena observed. Be careful. I do not want accidents. Garrett glanced at Rachel with irritation. Just do your job. The words landed harder than a shout. Rachel straightened slowly and continued working. She felt the weight of the room pressing in. The eyes, the judgment, the complicity of 200 people who watched a pregnant woman serve her husband's mistress and said nothing. Here is something worth remembering. Silence is not always strength. Sometimes silence is complicity. And sometimes the only person who will save you is you. Near the end of the evening, Serena stood and clinked her glass. The room quieted. Thank you all for coming, she said brightly. I believe in celebrating success openly. She gestured toward Garrett, who stood beside her with squared shoulders. And of course, none of this would be possible without support. Her eyes found Rachel near the back wall. Rachel, Serena said. Come here. The room quieted further. Rachel set down her tray and walked forward. She stood before the crowd, hands folded over her stomach, face expressionless. This is what loyalty looks like, Serena said, smiling broadly. Staying in your place. Serving without complaint. Someone laughed. Diana nodded approvingly from her chair. And then Serena lifted her glass and with exaggerated carelessness tilted it. Red wine splashed across Rachel's dress. It soaked through the fabric, spreading across her belly, dripping onto the polished floor. The room held its breath. "Oh," Serena said softly. "How unfortunate." The silence stretched. Rachel looked down at the spreading stain. Then she slowly raised her eyes. Her expression did not change. No tears, no anger, just stillness. The kind of stillness that should have terrified everyone in that room. "Clean it," Serena said quietly. "Before it stains." Rachel knelt. The marble was cold against her knees. She reached for a napkin and wiped the floor slowly, deliberately, while 200 people watched and not one of them spoke. Garrett looked away. When she finished, Rachel rose carefully. The stain remained on her dress, like a mark of everything they had done to her. "You can go," Serena said with a flick of her hand. Rachel walked away without a word. In the kitchen, she leaned against the counter and breathed deeply until the tightness in her chest eased. Her hands trembled. Not from shame, from adrenaline. This was the point of no return. Later that evening, after the guests had gone, a young man approached her nervously in the service hallway. Tommy Kowalski, Garrett's executive assistant, was 28, slightly built and visibly shaking. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said quietly, "I am so sorry. That was not right." Rachel studied him. "No, it was not." Tommy reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB drive. "There are files on here, financial records, communications between Serena and her brother Marcus. I do not know what they all mean, but I think you should have them." Rachel took the drive. "Why are you doing this?" Tommy swallowed hard. "Because my mother raised me better than this, and because I cannot sleep anymore." Rachel slipped the drive into her pocket. For a brief moment, hope flickered. The evidence she needed might be on this tiny piece of plastic. She had no idea yet that the files would contain something far worse than proof of an affair. Rachel waited until the penthouse was empty to review the USB drive. She borrowed a laptop from a bodega owner she had befriended during her walks and sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks away, scrolling through files with the speed and precision of someone who had spent a decade reading financial documents for hidden stories. The files confirmed what she already knew. Communications between Serena and her brother Marcus revealed a coordinated campaign. Marcus Cole was a disbarred lawyer, charming and ruthless, who handled Serena's strategies with the efficiency of someone who had long ago stopped distinguishing between legal and illegal. But it was the final folder that stopped Rachel cold. Marcus had been investigating her. He had already traced Crestline Holdings through 2 layers of corporate structure. He had not found Rachel's name yet, but he had found Julian Perry's name on an adjacent filing. One more step. One more search. And the connection between Rachel and the $22 million would be exposed. Rachel's hands went still on the keyboard. She read the document again, then again. It got worse. The last file was a draft legal motion. Marcus was preparing an emergency custody petition claiming Rachel was financially deceptive, emotionally unstable, and unable to provide a safe environment for a child. The language was clinical, devastating, and designed to strip her of parental rights before the baby was even born. They were not just trying to erase her from the penthouse, they were building a case to take her child. Rachel sat in the coffee shop surrounded by strangers living ordinary lives and felt the ground beneath her crack. Not break. Crack. The difference mattered. She closed the laptop. She placed both hands on her belly. she breathed. When the situation feels impossible, focus on what you can control in the next 24 hours. Not the whole war, just the next move. At 2 in the morning, from the small room near the kitchen, Rachel called Julian. "They are coming for custody," she said quietly, "and they are close to finding Crestline." Julian was silent for 3 seconds. She could hear him thinking. "We do not accelerate," he said finally. "We redirect. I know a federal judge who handles financial fraud cases. Listen to me, Rachel. If Marcus filed fraudulent documents to build that custody case, he just committed a felony. We do not run. We let them overreach. We let them make mistakes. And then we use those mistakes. What if they find Crestline first? Then we reveal it on our terms, not theirs. Timing, Rachel. You taught me that." She ended the call and lay in the darkness, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of laughter from the living room, where Garrett and Serena celebrated a victory that was already borrowed time. 3 days later, Serena made her move. It was morning. Garrett sat at the breakfast table, looking haggard. The pressure from investors was mounting. Calls went unanswered. Emails arrived marked urgent. The $22 million debt was approaching its payment window, and Garrett's cash flow had been thinning for months. Serena poured coffee with practiced calm and sat across from him. "This situation is unstable," she said, "and instability spreads." Garrett rubbed his face. "I know." "She is a liability," Serena continued, glancing toward the kitchen where Rachel worked silently. "Always watching, always quiet. You do not need that right now." From the living room, Diana Whitfield's voice joined the chorus. She had arrived the previous evening, summoned by Serena. "The family cannot afford scandal," Diana said, "not with everything happening." Marcus Cole leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, studying the scene like a chess player, watching the board clear. Garrett entered the kitchen. His face was set, jaw tight. He avoided Rachel's eyes. "We need to talk." They moved to the living room. Serena stood behind Garrett. Diana watched from the armchair. Marcus observed from the doorway. 4 people who had decided Rachel's fate without consulting her. "This is not working," Garrett said flatly. "You need to leave, temporarily." "And my child?" Rachel asked. Her voice was steady. "That is not the issue right now." The words confirmed everything she had feared and everything she had prepared for. "When?" she asked. "Now," Serena replied. "There is no reason to delay." Garrett gestured vaguely. "Take what you need. Just do not make a scene." Rachel walked to the small room near the kitchen. She gathered her belongings. There was not much. A change of clothes, personal documents, the folder beneath the mattress, the USB drive. When she returned to the living room, Serena smiled. "You should be grateful," she said. "We are being generous." Rachel looked at all 4 of them standing in the penthouse she had secretly financed, wearing confidence they had not earned, holding power they did not own. "I know," Rachel said. She walked through the door. It closed behind her with a sound that echoed longer than it should have. Rachel stood on the sidewalk, 9 months pregnant, one bag at her feet, the February wind cutting through her thin coat. The city moved around her. Taxis honked. People hurried past without looking. A vendor on the corner sold hot pretzels and did not notice the pregnant woman standing perfectly still in the cold. She did not cry. She did not shout. She picked up her bag and began to walk. The apartment Julian arranged was in Queens. Small, clean, safe. The heating worked. The locks were strong. The windows faced a courtyard where children played after school. Rachel set her bag on the bed and sat down. For the first time in months, no one ordered her to move. No one criticized the way she breathed. No one treated her existence as an inconvenience. She exhaled, then she lay back carefully, one hand on her belly, and slept, deeply, mercifully. She woke to darkness and a sharp pain low in her abdomen. At first, she thought it was the baby kicking. Then the pain came again, harder, and she understood. She was having contractions. Early. Too early. She called 911 from the kitchen floor, one hand gripping the phone, one hand pressed against her stomach, breathing through each wave. The ambulance arrived in 12 minutes. The paramedics were efficient and kind. At the hospital, the doctors stabilized her with medication and monitoring. "You are at high risk for early labor," the doctor said gently. "Complete bed rest. No stress. I mean that literally. No stress." Rachel almost laughed. The doctor did not understand why. She spent 2 days in the hospital. Julian visited, bringing documents she needed to review and soup she needed to eat. Tommy Kowalski sent flowers anonymously. Helen reached by phone in Kentucky, listened to her daughter's careful summary, and said nothing for 10 seconds. "I am coming," Helen said. "Mama, you do not need to. I did not ask your permission. I am coming." Rachel smiled for the first time in weeks. 2 days after Rachel's release from the hospital, Julian called with news that erased the smile entirely. "Rachel, I need you to stay calm." "What happened?" "Marcus found out about my involvement. 2 men jumped me outside my office last night. Broken ribs, fractured wrist. They left a note on my car. It said, 'Drop the case.'" Rachel's chest tightened. "Julian, I am fine. I am already at the hospital. But listen to me. I have already filed the federal complaint. Assault on an attorney is a separate felony. Marcus just made his biggest mistake. They are panicking, Rachel. That means we are winning. You are in a hospital bed. With one working hand and a very expensive phone. I have filed everything we need. They cannot stop this now." Rachel closed her eyes. The cost of this fight kept climbing. People she cared about were being hurt. "Are you still with me?" Julian asked. "I am still here," she said. "Good, because the next 72 hours are going to matter." He was right. The next morning, while Rachel lay on the couch following doctor's orders, her phone buzzed with a legal notification. Marcus had filed the emergency custody petition. The language was exactly what Rachel had seen in the draft on the USB drive. Financially deceptive, emotionally unstable, unable to provide safe environment for a child. A hearing was scheduled for 72 hours from now. Rachel read the filing 3 times. Her hands trembled. This was the worst-case scenario, happening at the worst possible time. They were trying to take her baby before it was born. Helen arrived that evening. She had driven 12 hours from Kentucky, stopping only for gas and coffee. She walked into the apartment, took one look at Rachel lying on the couch with documents spread across her chest, and set her bag down without a word. She sat on the edge of the couch and took Rachel's hand. "You listen to me," Helen said. Her voice carried the same steadiness it had carried for 40 years. "I cleaned houses my whole life. I raised you alone. I never had a lawyer or a dollar I did not earn with my own 2 hands. And nobody ever took what was mine." Rachel's eyes burned. "Mama, they are not taking this baby. You hear me? I hear you." Helen squeezed her hand. "Good. Now, what is the plan?" Rachel took a breath, then another. The fear did not leave, but it moved aside just enough for clarity to enter. "The plan," Rachel said slowly, "is that we stop playing defense." Julian Perry operated from his hospital bed with one functioning hand, a laptop balanced on a rolling table, and the focused intensity of someone who understood that the next 48 hours would determine everything. The federal complaint was already filed, It detailed Marcus Cole's pattern of fraud, witness intimidation, and assault. His disbarment record was attached. His history of fixing cases for wealthy clients was documented. The United States Attorney's Office acknowledged receipt and assigned an investigator. The custody response was next. Julian drafted a motion that did not simply defend Rachel. It reframed the entire narrative. Rachel Whitfield was not a dependent, deceptive wife hiding money from her husband. Rachel Whitfield was the principal creditor behind Crestline Holdings, the investment vehicle that had provided Garrett Whitfield with $22 million in capital funding. She was the financial architect of his empire. Every contract was attached, every routing document verified, every signature authenticated. Julian filed the motion on a Wednesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, the custody judge had read it twice. Tommy Kowalski provided the final piece. Terrified but resolute, he submitted a sworn affidavit documenting everything he had witnessed: the servitude, the humiliation, the gala incident, Serena's orders, Marcus's visits to the penthouse, the conversations he had overheard. Tommy's hands shook as he signed the document. "I'm going to get fired," he muttered. Julian looked at him over the laptop. "You are going to be able to sleep at night. That is worth more." Helen contributed in her own way. She organized Rachel's documents with military precision, labeling folders, checking dates, making sure every page was in order. At one point, she picked up Marcus's custody petition, held it at arm's length, and squinted. "This man wrote 4 pages to say my daughter is crazy," she said. "I raised that girl on cornbread and common sense. She is the sanest person in this whole mess." She paused. "Also, his grammar is terrible for a lawyer." Rachel laughed. It was small and brief, but it was real. While Rachel's team prepared, Garrett's world continued to fracture. The debt payment window had closed. Crestline Holdings had triggered enforcement protocols. Garrett's company board called an emergency meeting that produced more questions than answers. "Your exposure has compromised confidence," a board member said. "We need to protect the company," another added. Garrett tried to argue. He spoke of vision, of market shifts, of temporary setbacks. The words fell flat against spreadsheets that told a different story. At home, Nadia was losing patience. "You said this was solid," she snapped one evening. "It is," Garrett insisted. "Then why are people avoiding your calls?" Garrett had no answer that did not require admitting he had been wrong about everything. The hearing was scheduled for Friday. Both sides prepared. Garrett's legal team, expensive and confident, planned to present Rachel as unstable and secretive. Rachel's team, smaller and operating partly from a hospital bed, planned to present the truth. Thursday night, Rachel could not sleep. She sat at the kitchen table in the Queen's apartment, reviewing documents one final time. Helen made tea and sat across from her. "You scared?" Helen asked. "Yes." "Good. Scared means you understand what is at stake. Stupid people are never scared." Rachel smiled. "Thanks, Mama." "You are going to walk into that courtroom tomorrow, and you are going to stand up straight and tell the truth. That is all you have ever needed to do. The truth does not need decorating. It just needs someone brave enough to say it out loud." Rachel nodded. She placed her hand on her belly and felt Grace kick. "We are ready," she whispered. Manhattan Family Court occupied a gray building on Lafayette Street that managed to look both important and exhausted. The hallways smelled of floor cleaner and anxiety. Security guards directed traffic with the weary patience of people who had seen every kind of human drama and expected no surprises. They were about to be surprised. Garrett's legal team arrived first. 3 attorneys in dark suits carrying leather briefcases, radiating the quiet confidence of professionals who charged $800 an hour and expected results. Garrett walked behind them, jaw tight, eyes scanning the hallway. Serena followed, composed in a gray dress, her posture perfect, her expression carefully neutral. Diana Whitfield sat in the gallery, ankles crossed, watching the proceedings with the detachment of someone who believed courtrooms were for other people's problems. Marcus Cole stood near the back of the room, arms folded, wearing confidence like aftershave. He had orchestrated this. He expected to control it. Rachel entered slowly. Her belly was enormous now. The baby due within weeks. Helen walked beside her, one hand near Rachel's elbow, steady as stone. Julian followed, ribs taped beneath his suit, right arm in a sling, moving carefully but with a determination that made the injury irrelevant. Tommy Kowalski sat in the back row, looking like he might be sick. The judge, a silver-haired man named William Torres, reviewed files for a full minute before speaking. This court is convened to address an emergency custody petition filed on behalf of Garrett Whitfield regarding the unborn child of Rachel Whitfield. I have reviewed preliminary filings from both parties. He looked up. I will note for the record that the respondent's counter-filing contains materials that significantly expand the scope of this proceeding. Garrett's lead attorney stood. Your Honor, our client's petition is straightforward. We have documented evidence of financial deception and emotional instability that raises serious concerns about the respondent's fitness. Judge Torres nodded. Proceed. The attorney presented the case Marcus had constructed. Hidden accounts, secretive behavior, an argument that Rachel's quiet nature was evidence of manipulation rather than character. Rachel listened without expression. Helen sat beside her, hands folded in her lap, radiating a calm fury that could have melted the bench. When Garrett's team finished, Julian stood slowly. Your Honor, I would like to present evidence that directly addresses the petitioner's claims and introduces additional context this court has not yet seen. Judge Torres gestured. Go ahead. Julian placed a folder on the bench. The petitioner claims Rachel Whitfield engaged in financial deception. In fact, Mrs. Whitfield is the principal creditor behind Crestline Holdings, the investment vehicle that provided Garrett Whitfield with $22 million in development capital. The room went very still. Julian continued, every document is here. Origination records, routing authorizations, contractual terms. Mrs. Whitfield structured this investment through professional channels she maintained from her career as a forensic accountant. The funding was legal, properly documented, and entirely her initiative. Garrett stared at Rachel. His face went through several emotions in rapid succession, each one failing to settle before the next arrived. Confusion, disbelief, recognition, and finally something that looked like vertigo. That is not possible, he said hoarsely. It is, Rachel replied quietly. You never asked where the money came from. You just assumed you deserved it. Serena grabbed Garrett's arm. Do not say anything. Julian was not finished. He placed a second folder on the bench. Your Honor, I would also like to present a federal complaint filed with the United States Attorney's Office regarding Marcus Cole, who prepared the custody petition before this court. He outlined the charges: forged documents used to build the custody case, intimidation of witnesses, the assault on Julian himself, documented with hospital records and a police report. Marcus's composure cracked. He straightened against the wall, calculating escape routes. Mr. Cole is a disbarred attorney, Julian continued. His involvement in preparing legal filings raises serious questions about the integrity of the petition before this court. Judge Torres looked at Marcus over his glasses. Marcus said nothing. Then Julian placed a third folder on the bench, and the room shifted in a way no one had anticipated. Finally, Your Honor, I would like to present communications recovered from devices associated with Marcus Cole that reveal the scope of coordination behind this petition. He paused. These communications show that Diana Whitfield initiated contact between Serena Cole and Garrett Whitfield over 18 months ago. Diana Whitfield funded Marcus Cole's investigation into Rachel Whitfield. Diana Whitfield approved the custody filing and provided strategic direction throughout. Diana stood abruptly from the gallery. This is outrageous. Judge Torres fixed her with a gaze that silenced the room. Ma'am, please sit down. Garrett turned to his mother. The color drained from his face. You set this up? He said. From the beginning? Diana's jaw tightened. I protected this family. You destroyed it, Garrett replied. The words settled into the room like dust after an explosion. Nobody moved. Judge Torres took a full minute to review the documents. The courtroom waited. Rachel sat with her hands on her belly, feeling Grace move inside her, and breathed. The judge spoke. I have reviewed the materials presented by both parties. The emergency custody petition, filed on behalf of Garrett Whitfield, is dismissed with prejudice. The court finds that the petition was based on misrepresentation and was prepared with the involvement of a disbarred attorney acting in a fraudulent capacity. He continued, Marcus Cole is referred to the United States Attorney's Office for federal prosecution. Serena Cole is named as a co-conspirator and is barred from contact with Rachel Whitfield pending investigation. Diana Whitfield is referred for investigation regarding conspiracy and financial manipulation. He turned to Rachel. Mrs. Whitfield, this court grants you full, temporary custody of your unborn child. Mr. Whitfield's financial assets are frozen pending a full review of the Crestline Holdings obligation. Structured proceedings will follow. Rachel nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. As the courtroom began to clear, 2 federal agents entered through the back door. Marcus saw them first. He turned toward the exit, but they were already there. Marcus Cole? One agent said calmly. Marcus looked at Serena. She looked away. He was escorted out without handcuffs, without drama, without the spectacle he had always relied on to manage consequences. Serena watched him go, then turned to Garrett. This is not over. Garrett did not look at her. Yes, it is. Diana gathered her coat and walked toward the door with rigid dignity, as if leaving a courtroom under investigation were simply another social engagement that had run long. Rachel stood with Helen's help. Julian moved to her side. Tommy Kowalski appeared in the hallway, pale but relieved. Mrs. Whitfield, Tommy said, I just wanted to say, I am glad. Rachel smiled. Thank you, Tommy, for everything. Garrett remained seated. The courtroom was nearly empty. Rachel passed his row on her way out. He spoke without turning. I never saw you. Not really. Rachel paused. You saw what you needed me to be. That is different. She kept walking. Outside, a reporter approached the group. Can we get a comment? Are you Mrs. Whitfield's legal team? Helen turned, adjusting her purse. Legal team? Honey, I am her mama. And if you want to quote, here it is. Do not ever underestimate a woman who grew up watching her mother clean floors. We know where all the dirt is. The reporter blinked. Helen walked away without looking back. 6 weeks later, Rachel Whitfield gave birth to a healthy daughter in a Manhattan hospital room that smelled of clean sheets and possibility. The delivery was long but uncomplicated. Helen held her hand through every contraction. Julian waited in the hallway, pretending to review documents, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Tommy sent a stuffed bear that arrived before the baby did. When the first cry filled the room, Rachel closed her eyes. Tears came, not from pain, but from the specific relief of holding something precious that no one could take away. She named her grace, not because the word described what she had been given, but because it described what she had chosen every single day, when choosing it was the hardest thing in the world. The weeks that followed moved slowly, mercifully. Rachel rested. She healed. She held her daughter in the quiet apartment in Queens and listened to the ordinary sounds of a city that continued without drama. Sirens in the distance, children laughing in the courtyard, Helen singing old Kentucky songs in the kitchen while making biscuits that were better than anything Manhattan had to offer. Julian visited weekly, with updates that grew progressively less urgent. Marcus Cole's federal case moved forward with the mechanical certainty of a system that had found its rhythm. Serena Cole's legal troubles multiplied as investigators discovered additional financial irregularities tied to her history. Diana Whitfield retained expensive lawyers and maintained her innocence with the same rigid composure she brought to everything else. The Crestline Holdings debt was resolved through structured proceedings. Garrett lost majority control of Whitfield Capital. The company continued under new oversight, smaller, slower, and for the first time, honest about its foundations. Rachel did not celebrate. Celebration implied that someone else's loss was her gain. She had never wanted Garrett to fall. She had wanted the truth to stand. There is a lesson in that distinction, and it is this: real justice does not humiliate. It corrects. It does not destroy. It rebuilds. And it does not require the person who was wronged to become cruel in order to be whole again. The hardest kind of strength is the kind that refuses to become the thing that hurt you. One afternoon, Garrett requested a meeting, not through lawyers, through a simple message. "Can I see her?" Rachel considered carefully. She consulted Julian. She spoke with Helen. She thought about it for 2 full days. Then she agreed, under conditions. They met in a neutral space, a small, quiet room with a window that let in afternoon light. No cameras, no audience, just 2 people who had once promised each other forever and were now learning what honesty looked like in the ruins of that promise. Garrett held Grace gently. His hands trembled. The baby studied his face with the serious concentration of someone forming a first impression. "I will not fail her," Garrett said quietly. Rachel met his gaze. "You do not get to promise. You get to show." He nodded. He understood the difference now. Promises were easy. Patrick had built his entire life on promises. Showing up required something he was only beginning to learn. When the visit ended, Garrett paused at the door. "I am sorry," he said. "Not because I was caught, because I was wrong." Rachel studied him for a long moment. "That is a start." He left. Rachel watched him go without bitterness. Some chapters close with rage. Some close with forgiveness. This one closed with accuracy. A clear-eyed acknowledgement of what happened, what it cost, and what it meant. Months passed. Rachel started a consulting practice from her apartment, working with women navigating financially abusive situations. She helped them trace hidden assets, secure independent accounts, and build the kind of invisible safety net she had constructed for herself years earlier. She never spoke publicly about what happened. She did not need to. The women who found her recognized the markers of someone who had survived without losing herself. Julian recovered fully and became her business partner. He still winced when he laughed too hard, and he still checked his phone every 30 seconds when he was nervous. But the broken ribs had healed and the sling was gone. Tommy Kowalski quit Whitfield Capital the day after the hearing. He became Julian and Rachel's first hire. He was still nervous. He was still terrible at lying. He answered the phone with too much enthusiasm and over-explained everything. He was exactly what they needed. Helen stayed in New York for 3 months, then returned to Kentucky with strict instructions. "You call me every Sunday," Helen said at the airport, adjusting Rachel's collar as if she were still 6 years old. "And you feed that baby real food, not whatever they sell in this city that they call bread." "Yes, Mama." Helen kissed Grace on the forehead, then looked at Rachel with eyes that held 40 years of hard floors and harder choices and love that never once wavered. "I am proud of you," Helen said. "Your daddy would be too." Rachel held her mother for a long time. Some debts could never be repaid. They could only be honored. Spring arrived. Rachel walked through Central Park with Grace tucked against her chest in a carrier, watching the trees produce leaves with the patient confidence of things that had survived winter before and knew they would survive it again. She thought about her mother's lessons: guard your dignity, silence is not surrender, patience can be power. She had lived all three. That evening, with Grace asleep in the next room and the city glowing outside her window, Rachel sat at her desk and opened her notebook. She wrote a single line, not for record, not for evidence, for remembrance. Justice does not always raise its voice. Sometimes it just stands long enough to be seen. She closed the notebook and listened to the quiet. It was the good kind of quiet now, the kind that meant safety, the kind that meant home. Life rarely teaches its deepest lessons through noise or spectacle. More often, it teaches them in silence, through moments where dignity is tested, where patience feels indistinguishable from weakness, where doing the right thing brings no immediate reward. Rachel's story is a reminder that power does not always belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one who understands timing, boundaries, and self-worth. If you have ever felt invisible, if you have ever been underestimated because you stayed calm instead of reacting, if you have ever wondered whether your patience was strength or foolishness, this story is for you. Your restraint is not weakness. Your silence is not surrender. And your time will come, not always in the way you expect, but in the way you need. Now we want to hear from you. What part of Rachel's journey moved you the most? Have you ever experienced a moment where staying silent became an act of strength? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. And one more thing. 6 months after the hearing, Rachel was putting Grace to bed when her phone rang. Julian's name appeared on the screen. "Rachel, we have a problem." She paused. "What kind of problem?" "Serena took a plea deal. Charges reduced. She is out." Silence. "And Diana posted her bail." "Rachel, they are not done." Rachel looked at Grace, sleeping in her crib. Small fingers curled, breathing soft. Perfect. Safe. She took a slow breath. "Neither am I." If you want to know what happens next, subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with us. Because Rachel Whitfield's story is not over. It is just getting started. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with real emotional depth and life lessons. Every word was crafted with intention. Every scene was built to remind you that dignity, patience, and quiet courage are never wasted. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this community.